Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We broadcast 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. And if you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933 is the telephone call-in number. If you'd like to listen on your telephone as you travel while we are live or at home, that telephone listen line number is 712-770-9418. 712-770-9418. Today we're going to be talking about gun shows. And I want to make it very clear, this is not an infomercial. We are not trying to sell you on going to a specific gun show. What we want to do is make you aware of what gun shows are. Times are getting very dicey. I'm very concerned. I've been going to gun shows for, since the 80s. And I have been to a specific gun show called the RKshows for all the years I've been in Missouri. The entire family has been. Mrs. Finelli, our boys, and I have gone. Sometimes all four of us go. And the gun show that I attended most recently was the RKshows in Springfield, Missouri. I know the owner. His name is Rex Curley. And he is on the air with us today. And he's going to spend an hour with us. And we're going to talk about protocols, do's and don'ts, what to expect, how they work, the legalities. So what you need to know about gun shows from the man who owns the largest number of gun shows in the United States of America. Welcome, Rex Curley.
Thank you, Vincent. It's great to be with you, and looking forward to spending a little time with you this morning.
Did I say that correctly, Rex, that you have the largest number of shows in the country?
We do. We do shows all the way from southeast to like Georgia, and we go as far west as Colorado. Years ago, we used to do a big show in Las Vegas, and which we ended up selling to one of our good friends out there. So we've seen a lot of different things, and over the many, many years, I've been doing this actually since 1988, and the things have certainly changed over the years, I will say that.
So, Rex, let's talk about that. When I saw you over the weekend, when I came to Springfield to your show, I asked if you'd come on the air with me, and you said you would, and I'm delighted. This is our first broadcast together. What has changed over the years at the gun show? What has changed? Well,
we're under a much greater, I would say, microscope. The media watches us like crazy, and we don't have a problem with that. We have high expectations for ourselves, but it used to be a much more laid back atmosphere. And now it's more they're trying to almost like it's a gotcha type of situation. They try and take undercover photography and all of that type of thing at the shows, and the gun shows have really gotten so misbranded by the media. The statistics on the amount of firearms that are used in a crime. What would you guess the amount of firearms come from a gun show that get used in a crime? The number
less than one half of 1%.
You are right. Yes, and so when you look at that, and that's a study from our own Justice Department and Department of Justice. So when you look at that, it's really odd that anybody even wastes their time having a conversation about firearms coming from gun shows. It's just not the source of any firearms that are used in crimes. So, but it's in answering your question in a roundabout way, we operate much differently than we did in the past, just simply because we're under an awful lot of scrutiny, and so that's kind of what's changed.
What about the guests? I would consider when I come to one of your shows, I'm a guest. I'm not an exhibitor. Like over the weekend, I was a guest. And how have the guests changed, or have they not changed over since 1988?
They really haven't changed a lot. I would say that we get more. Our demographics as far as the women that attend, we get a lot more ladies that come to the shows than used to. And I think a lot of that is with the concealed carry and then the self-defense and that type of thing. So, but outside of that, as you've seen, the gun and knife shows really are a family atmosphere. And I know, as you had alluded to earlier, oftentimes you'll bring all of your family members to the show, and that's what we really cater to and what we really enjoy. And if you ever met any of our vendors or that type of thing, they're super duper people. I one time had my banker tell me that I get the least percentage of bounce checks of any business that he's ever seen, and so that speaks real well of the people that we deal with at the gun shows. It's really a family atmosphere.
Rex, you may find this odd when I say this, but one of the things I really enjoy, and this is kind of nutty, but to come to your show, there's typically a line of people waiting to pay for their tickets to come in. And the line can be really long or, maybe just a few minutes long, maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes long for a short line. And I was in line over the weekend, and I enjoy talking to the people around me. I'll say hi to the guy in front of me, hi to the guy behind me, and we'll chat, and we become instantly friends. There's no yelling, screaming, pushing. There's no trash being thrown on the parking lot if it's outside. There's no trash on the floors of the gun shows. The people who attend, the guests, if we call them that, are really considerate. There's no loud voices. It's all calm. There's no hurry, hurry, hurry. There's no rush. It's a wonderful environment. As if you contrasted that to a line to go buy movie tickets, it's nowhere near as polite, nowhere near as nice. And that is one of the characteristics that I've seen at a gun show. Would you agree with that?
I do, and we are truly blessed to be able to work with the folks that we work with on a weekly basis, and they are super good people. The shows, in the past, we've been able to fundraise for people and do some really nice things with the gun shows. And our audience is just they're patriots, they're wonderful people. They're your next door neighbors, and they're the folks that you want to have as your next door neighbors. And so when you say that you've waited in line and oftentimes strike up conversation, that's just a group of wonderful, like-minded people that love the Second Amendment and love to be able to assemble there and talk and have a lot of things in common. Which it could be target shooting, it could be collecting, it could be that they're there for self-defense purposes to learn and get their concealed carry permit. So we got a great audience, and we love them, and we're very fortunate to have them.
I was interested in buying a part for a gun over the weekend, a firing pin, a small part. something that is generally not all that visible in a pistol. Most of the time you can't really see it. If you can see just the tip of it. And so I wanted to buy one, and it was kind of for an odd handgun. And I went to a table and I talked, and there were two senior citizen type guys there, and they spent a half hour with me. And they wanted to make sure that I got the right one. And then they determined they didn't have the right one, and they weren't annoyed. They weren't annoyed that, they couldn't sell me anything because they didn't have it. But they were educating me and my son, and it was it's an educational experience. So I wanted to share that is a component of the gun show. So if you don't know, you can ask 5, 10 20 different people, anybody you see, you can ask them a question. And I can pretty much guarantee that anybody that you meet will be glad to help you. Is that what you see as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're not only there to do business, but they're also there to educate, and they truly enjoy themselves. And the people that attend the gun shows, they are very knowledgeable. There's a world of knowledge in there, and we like to always tell everybody that we pretty much have anything and everything from the Civil War all the way up to the present. So you just don't ever know what neat things that you are going to find at a gun and knife show.
So if you are listening and you happen to have never been to one, and you're a guy or a gal, it doesn't matter, and the age doesn't matter. If you are unfamiliar and a little bit nervous about going to a show, I'd like to put those concerns to rest. And Rex, how would you see it? So someone who is not knowledgeable, has never been to a show before, is interested in, let's say, a self-defense handgun. What would you recommend that person do coming to, a gun show?
Well, first of all, I would establish a budget in advance, and you didn't used to be able to buy anything, on a budget. Today, there's many firearms out there that I know Ruger has a very economical line, and Kel-Tec, and there's a lot of them. So for people on a budget, you can buy something pretty nice. That didn't used to be the case probably 10 or 12 years ago. But establish a budget, and then after that, I would just recommend going in and handling a few guns and seeing what feels the best, and really getting educated. Especially if someone is starting to engage in concealed carry, literally you need to get so educated that you can handle that firearm proficiently in the dark, which of course is generally when you would probably need it. And so education is the number one thing. And I always tell everybody, an accident with a gun doesn't give any of us a second chance. If you have an accidental discharge that hits you or a loved one or something like that, the guns aren't to play with. They can be very enjoyable. They can save our lives. They're fun to shoot and all of that type of thing. But that's my main thing, is I would recommend just get super duper educated, and that will really help you going forward.
Rex, we're going into our first break, and we've got 40 more minutes to spend talking about guns and gun shows. When we come back, I'd like to ask you about legalities. What's legal? We'll be right back. We're talking about guns and gun shows, class, and we're trying to let you know what it's like if you decide that you want to learn more about guns and what it's like to feel them, handle them, and purchase one. It's my opinion that one of the best things that you can do if you're a novice and you want to learn about them is to go with someone who is more knowledgeable than you might be for your first time. And if you go to a gun show together, you will be able to feel and see more guns in one place than any other venue. More guns. You'll get a chance to see the first one, and you may say, well, this is really neat. And you may be tempted to buy it. And then as you spend a little more time there, you'll say, oh, this one's really, really neat. And then by the time you see the 7th or 8th one and hold it, you might realize that the first one that you saw was nice, but not as nice as one of the other ones that you saw. So in that line of thinking, what are the legalities, Rex Curley, of buying a gun? So if I came to your gun show, as I did over the weekend, as a Missouri resident, and the gun show is in Missouri, and many of the sellers are from Missouri, what are the legalities of me buying a gun right there?
The legalities at a gun show are very similar to anywhere that you might go into, like a sporting goods store or anything like that. Basically, you have to be over 21 years of age to purchase a handgun. You have to be over 18 years of age to purchase a long gun, and of course, you can't be a felon and purchase a firearm, of course, or handle ammunition for that matter. But anyway, they will do a background check on you where they call in. You'll fill out some paperwork, and they'll run a background check, and that usually takes usually about 10 minutes, and then you're good to go on that. But anyway, it's very similar to buying a firearm like at a Walmart or something like that.
Okay. And what if a person wanted to buy a used gun from someone who has a table and they're selling some of their collection? So over the years, they've collected pistols, revolvers, shotguns, rifles, and they decided that, they're going to thin out their collection. Maybe they want to buy something different with the money that they receive from selling. Are there restrictions in a state such as Missouri for a person privately selling? He may have or she may have a table at your show. They may have rented a table or paid for a table, and they're selling privately. Are there any restrictions there?
It is legal to, let's just say if you had inherited a collection from a family member, for instance, or maybe you had just had a lifetime of collecting and you just want to get rid of some things, it is perfectly legal to do that. The one area that they are very, very strict on is people crossing the state lines. So, in other words, a person from Arkansas couldn't bring their collection to Missouri and liquidate it to the general public. They can, however, bring their collection to a gun show and sell them to vendors, federally licensed vendors. They can sell them to those folks. But as far as a person, let's just say that is from Missouri there, if they've got a collection that they want to get rid of, they can come to the gun show and sell those firearms. So they can rent a table from me or whatever on that. The one thing that they do watch very closely on that is you have to make sure that you go by all of the applicable laws. So in other words, don't sell handguns to someone that is, under 21, and then that type of thing. And then long guns, of course, they have to be over 18 to purchase those. We encourage everybody to make sure that they check IDs. And if you're selling your personal collection, you actually cannot sell firearms to someone out of state. So in other words, if you're from Missouri selling your collection, you couldn't sell, firearms to someone that was from Arkansas or someone that was maybe from Iowa or that type of thing. So it's basically, though, it just you have to watch the age, and we encourage everybody to check IDs and that type of thing. And it's over 18 on long guns and over 21 on handguns.
Rex Curley's with us. We'll be back in just a few short moments after bottom of the hour commercial announcements. We've got a half hour to go. Rex Curley's with us. RKshows is the name of his gun show, and there are lots of them in lots of locations throughout the United States. One way you can find gun shows in your area is you can just go to your favorite search engine. I hope you consider DuckDuckGo, DuckDuckGo, as a search engine, and just type in gun space shows, hit the enter key, and you'll find lots of them. Most of them are going to be RK shows. And as a matter of fact, there's one coming up near us in St. Robert this weekend, and I may actually be able to swing out that way and attend if my schedule works out and the snow stops snowing and the ice doesn't freeze on the roads. I mentioned early in this broadcast that this is not an infomercial about gun shows. It's not. The reason Rex and I are doing this is I asked Rex if he would consider coming on the air with me and talk about gun shows. Now, radio has become a venue where people try to sell things, and sometimes people have infomercials which they pay for, for selling real estate and classes and things like that. That is not the case here. Rex has volunteered. Well, I asked him, and he said, sure. So he's not being paid, and I'm not being paid. So I just want to make it clear that there's no hidden agenda other than educating you about what a gun show is like. So, Rex, I went to your gun show over the weekend, and there was a guy that had a table. He rented a table from you. And he had something on his table that I was interested in. It was a handgun. It was a pistol. And it said it had a little index card that said, make reasonable offer. So and I'm asking you about protocol, and I want you to, if you don't mind, to comment on the way I handle this and tell me if I violated protocol or I used the correct protocol. So my son and I walked up to his table, and we noticed it, and the guys behind the table noticed us. And I said, it seems like this is for sale. May I see it? May I look at it? And he said, sure. And so I handled it, didn't point it, even though it was tie-wrapped, so that it could not discharge accidentally. I certainly didn't point it at him or anyone else. I looked at it in a careful manner, and I said to him, so how much would you like for this? Because there was no price. And he said, make me an offer. And I said, well, I'd rather not do that. I'd rather you provide a number, you give me a number, and I can decide from that point whether I'd like to buy it or not. And so he said, no, you give me a number. I said, no, I'd rather not do that. And so he finally said a number. And I said, okay. And I put it down. And I didn't say yes or no, I just put it down. And I indicated to him that number wasn't really good. And he said, so what's your number? And I said, well, actually, you and I have exactly the same number in mind. And he looked at me like, we do? And I said, yeah, we have to the penny the exact number in mind. And he said, well, what's your number? And I said, okay, well, I'll tell you. No, he said to me, I paid X for it. And I said, well, that's exactly the same number as I have. So we both think it's worth the same amount because you paid exactly to the penny what I would pay. And it was kind of interesting how that worked. And I decided to buy it. Now, I wanted to let him know that I was not a felon, and I wanted to make sure he wasn't a felon, and that we're both from Missouri. And then we had a transaction, and he received Federal Reserve notes, and I received the handgun. Would you like to comment on? Now, we did not exchange licenses. Oh, I asked him if it worked perfectly. Is there anything wrong with it? Is there any reason why this would not operate properly? And he said, no, it works properly. Now, other than exchanging identifications, which is really not required, it's suggested but not required, can you comment on how that transaction went?
No, that's you went by the standard protocol on that, and at the gun and knife shows, that's often what happens is that you will get together with a person and kind of come upon a common price and an agreement, and things are generally marked. Not everybody marks their firearms as far as pricing them. Some people do and some don't. So, but no, that's just a typical negotiation, and that's typically how it goes. So that sounds like you were able to get a good deal together there, and then both parties were happy, which that's the important thing.
Mm-hmm. And so what about ammunition? Are there any restrictions whatsoever on buying ammunition?
You have to be over 21 to buy ammo that would be considered for a handgun. So in other words, like 45 ACP or those types of things. You have to be over 18 to buy ammo that could be used for hunting, such as shotgun shells or 22 rifles or that type of thing. So that's basically the restrictions on ammunition. Now there are some states which I don't do business in Illinois. But in Illinois, if they have what they call a firearms owner identification card. And if you don't show that thing when you're buying ammunition, I mean, I'm not sure what the penalty is for it, but I know the state patrol over there watches that very closely, and that's a really, really big no-no if you don't show your FOID card when you buy ammunition. So some of the states, when we get away from Missouri, some of the states have some really, really, really crazy restrictions, and of course, the conversation now is so applicable when you look at Virginia. Most of the state of Virginia is very pro-gun, very pro-Second Amendment. But what the terrifying thing that they're finding is that a few people in the state are passing the laws for all the good folks out in the country. And, of course, now you're seeing the protests and all of that type of thing. And it really points out to us how great of a fight that we have that we have on our hands just to maintain our freedoms. And what you're seeing out there in Virginia, is absolutely terrifying with all of those good people out there.
Mm-hmm. I was there a little over 2 decades ago. I came from Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I was at a gun show in Richmond, Virginia, and a very unusual thing happened. Normally, the people who attend gun shows, at least from my perspective, are just the salt of the earth. They're just really nice people, and they're across all walks of life. Mechanics, doctors, lawyers, I mean, every farmers, every walk of life you could think of. And polite. And there seems to be a special amount of being polite that is across these people. Well, at this particular gun show, it was packed in Richmond, Virginia, state capital. There were 2 guys there that were a little seedy looking. Actually, they were very seedy looking. And they had hoodies on. And they had their hoodies on in the gun show. And you don't see that. You might see guys and gals with ball caps, but you never see hoodies. And you never see sloppy dressed people. Their pants fit, and they look respectable. Hardworking and respectable. These 2 guys didn't fit the bill. And I was a few feet away, and all of a sudden, there was a commotion. And one of those 2 guys was face down on the floor of the gun show, and there were a bunch of guys on top of him. And what happened was the guests saw one of these guys take a gun off the table and try to steal it. And the guests piled on top, almost like in football, until the police came and arrested the guy. That's the only time, and this is hundreds of gun shows I've attended, the only time I saw that. And it was an anomaly. Guys looking seedy, attending. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
We will get it more often in the larger cities. We used to have a theft problem actually at our show in Memphis, and we actually started requiring cabling to deal with that, cabling or firearms under glass in regards to handguns. And so we had to adapt down there to the situation because theft was becoming a bit of an issue at that show. And but today it's a non-issue. It's not a problem anymore. So we don't get much of that, though. I'll give you, for instance, at a typical Springfield show, I can't even remember when the last time we had a firearm stolen there was. So that tells you how rare it is, and so it's not anything that happens very often. So, but yeah, that goes to the brand of people that attend the gun shows. What you witness there in Richmond is the fact that we kind of police our own a little bit. They're good, honest people, and of course they seen something happen that was wrong, and like any good citizen would, they stepped in and handled it. So
it was immediate. I mean, there was no delay, and it wasn't like there was a patrol of concerned attendees walking around looking for a problem. It wasn't like that. It was just a bunch of attendees who happened to be in the area. They saw it, and they were not going to let it continue. They were stopped it right then and there. Let's talk about the police presence. I've noticed over the years, it seems to me that there is a greater police presence at gun shows. Is that correct, or am I just imagining that?
It would be correct. When we first started doing the shows back in 1988, the world was a whole lot more laid back, I guess I'll say, back then. And there really just wasn't the need for it. And so when we have like a police officer at a gun show, they're there. They are present, mainly for the purpose of, in case anything like that would happen, if they would have to make an arrest or that type of thing. So kind of a detrimental presence to anyone who may think of doing that type of thing. But of course, as you've seen, Vincent, with our demographics, 99.9% of the people who attend gun shows, like I alluded to earlier, they're the folks that you want as your next door neighbor. So we typically don't get many problems, and if there ever is any, the situation that you had talked about in Virginia is something that we've had that happen before at our shows. We had a person in Nashville one time that they had caught stealing a gun, and then they literally had a big time wrestling match with the person until the law enforcement arrived to take care of the situation. So we got a pretty good group, and stories like that, they certainly don't happen very often.
So I just want to mention to our class, at all the gun shows, RK gun shows I've been to, and I've been to a lot of them, I have never seen a problem. Not once. Never. Never. And I wanted to compliment you, Rex, on your team. As a matter of fact, I came up to you at the one over the weekend to tell you about the gal who, checked to make sure that my stamp was good. And I said, I was here yesterday, and of course I did my civic duty and took a shower, and the stamp didn't stay on. They stamp your hands when you go in to show that you are a paid-up member or a guest. And the stamp wore off, and I said, I was here yesterday, and she said, I believe you. And I thought that was really nice, and that's why I went over to you and complimented you on that. When we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the gun shows with Rex Curley. We've been talking about gun shows with Rex Curley, and so I went to the internet and I typed in gun shows. Rex, let me tell you this, you are extremely modest and humble. You've got 4 gun shows, at least, that I found on the internet running this weekend. You've got one in St. Robert, Missouri. You've got one in Lawrenceville, Georgia, one in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Is that right?
That is correct. I'm actually sitting here in Tulsa myself. So, and yeah, we do. We have a busy weekend this weekend.
If someone wanted to exhibit at your gun show, what's required of them?
Basically, they pretty much will call in and rent a table from us, which they can pay by credit card or they can send in a check. Pretty user friendly on that. And then when they show up at the show, we have a safety contract, kind of an ethics contract that we'll have them read through, and then they sign that. And then in many areas, the tax people will come out and give them tax forms, and in some areas they do not. And anyway, that's what they're kind of required to do. We'll have a rules guideline sheet, in regards to the firearm sales, what you can and what you cannot do, and that type of thing. So it's pretty simple and it's pretty straightforward.
Rex, what is the URL of your website? I've typed RKshows.com, and it's not working from my location here. Is that the correct website? That is, yeah. It should take you right to it. RKshows.com. That should okay. Get you there. It might be my computers here at the studio that are causing the problem. Okay, RKshows RKshows.com. And if you go to the shows, you might want to say hi to Rex Curley. He'll be at many of the shows. He certainly has been to the ones in Springfield, Missouri. And just say hi, and I think you'll enjoy a short chat with him. Rex, do you ever have to mediate between a buyer, let's say a vendor comes and sells some guns, and let's say the buyer asks the question that I asked: does this work? Is there anything wrong with it? Is there some reason why this would not work properly? You know, the price is agreed upon, everything is above board, and the buyer gets it, takes it home on a Saturday, and it just goes click. It doesn't go bang. Maybe it's a problem with the hammer or the firing pin. Something is broken. It doesn't work. Do you ever get involved in resolving those kinds of issues?
We really rarely have anything like that ever comes up. Typically, if it does, and when I say this is rare, it's exceedingly rare. If it does, it's usually a civil issue. And what we do is over the many years, if we get several complaints, on a certain vendor, and I've only ever done this one time, so this is how rare it is, but we had one vendor that was doing some bad business with folks. And, of course, after we got 3 or 4 different complaints on that particular vendor, then we banned them from the show. So that is something that really is very, very rare. So we don't, most of our vendors and our customers, they tend to usually kind of figure it out themselves, with one another, and they're all pretty good, fair people. So usually that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I got to tell you, I was at one of your shows and I bought a gun and it didn't work. And, of course, I asked the question to the seller. This was like a once in a while type seller. It wasn't a guy that you've got regularly. And he said it worked. And I said, I brought it back the next day and I said, it doesn't work. And here's the problem. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I think we should, I think you should refund me the cost of the part that's broken because you said it worked. And he was absolutely terrified that I was going to go see you. He said, are you going to go up there to the front? I said, no, I don't plan on doing that. So evidently you carry a big stick and you speak softly. That's the impression that
we've got a good bunch of vendors, and they're very respectful, and they're very fair, and that's really how we try and do things, is just to try and be fair. I call it being fair to a fault. And and in your situation, I'm sure that particular vendor wanted to make you happy just simply because it was the right thing to do. And
that's that's right. Yeah, that's what happened.
And that's how. But Vincent, that's how gun people are. And they're good people. They're law-abiding citizens. They care about their country. They care about the Second Amendment. And that's the type of people that we have coming to the gun shows. And that's just who they are. They're the type of people that when they protest or anything like that, they clean up their messes. They're honorable and they're law-abiding citizens.
Rex, we're out of time. I'd like to do this again and again with you if you can.
I'd love to.
Thanks for being with us. Rex Curley, RKshows.com. Don't you just love that voice? That is the voice of Ron Allan. When I first started broadcasting, I connected with Ron Allan. There was a guy by the name of Lee Wickenhauser, who is a USA Prepares instructor. He's employed by Genesis Communications Network. And I asked him about intros, outros, introductions, outroductions. And he said, Ron Allan, the big voice. And he said he can help you. So I contacted Ron Allan, and he came up with the introductions, the outroductions, the rejoiners, all of it. And he's the voice. Welcome, Ron Allan.
Hey, Vincent. It's good to be back on the air with you and everybody in the class today.
Ron, thank you for spending this time with us this hour. We want to talk about commercials and we want to talk about radio and how it's changed. And I've noticed that over the years, back in the 1950s, I would listen to the radio with my mom, and before I went to school and after school, and radio it was the beginning of talk radio. There's plenty of music, but it was the beginning of talk programs when people would talk about health and medicine and activities in their lives. And then over the decades, radio has started to morph into infomercials and sell. And I believe it's even crossed the line with, at least my line, with some of the advertising. I'm not talking about yours. I'm talking about, I heard a commercial for Charmin toilet paper, and they talk about how you can have a shiny hiney if you use Charmin toilet paper. And I believe they've crossed the decency line. Are you seeing that as well? Or is it just that I'm sensitive to poor behavior?
No, I think you're right. We're all becoming desensitized. The lines have been crossed, not just on radio, in society in general. We're seeing that through social media and you name it. There is no decency, and the lines have been crossed, and because certain industries are allowing it, pushing the envelope, it will continue. And I don't think I ever dreamed about a shiny hiney. How about you?
No, and I just happened to go to USA Prepares. I just wanted to see on the internet, and Ron Gibson picks up this broadcast every day that we're on the air 5 days a week and posts it on YouTube. And YouTube then puts their commercials on our broadcast. So we do the content and they sell. And I saw the most outrageous video commercial about deodorant. And it was about a deodorant I never heard of. And it crossed the line as well. And it showed this woman, this singer dancer, lifting up her skirt and indicating that this deodorant's good for under there too. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe, and it frosted me that we've gotten to this point. So, is there anything that we can do other than not buy those products, or do we just put up with it?
No, you're exactly right. Any kind of behavior modification, if it hurts in the pocketbook, it'll definitely change behavior. But did you ever envision some singer, dancer, twirling around on stage and then lifting up her skirt a little bit and saying, hey, we can help you there too, because boy, you certainly don't want to be, you don't want to stand out in a crowd from stinking. I mean, that's what this commercial was. I couldn't believe it. Well, and I don't think, go ahead. They're trying every angle to be competitive. People like you and your age and my age, our demographic, we have a better sense of our moral direction. We have not lost it. But the younger generation, yes, they've lost it. They never had it in the first place. Their parents didn't teach them. And so they see and hear these things, and they say, yeah, that's okay, to each his own, and live and let live, and all these pat phrases that came out of the 60s and the 70s. Now we're seeing it manifesting.
I was talking, we have a traditional 1950s, 1960s style family. The boys live at home and they operate their businesses from the farm. And rather than, move into smaller quarters, we combine resources, and instead of having multiple insurance payments, multiple electric bills, multiple everything, we have one because we all live here on the farm, and I just love it. So our son, we have meals together, breakfast, sometimes lunch, dinners. And our son was, one of our sons who's in his latter part of his 20s, was telling me he drives he's a farmer, He's a degreed farmer, so he's been educated at the university to learn how to be a farmer. And he drives an old Dodge 3/4-ton pickup truck, and he was listening to the radio. And he said, "Dad, you won't believe these idiotic commercials on the radio." He says, "When I hear them, the first thing I do is hit the off button." So not only, he doesn't scan to go to a different station. He just shuts it down. He doesn't want to hear it. It bothers him that much. And what he was talking about with this particular commercial that he was describing was a husband and wife. And the husband is trying to save money on flooring, meaning he wants to replace the flooring with something newer. And the wife berates him, just berates this idiotic scripted guy who doesn't know how to do it. So they need to call the Dave, because Dave knows how to do it. Dave's Flooring, that's where you go if you want flooring done right. But you certainly can't do it yourself because, you're not bright enough, husband. You're not bright enough to do it. And our son just hit the off button. What's up with the dumbing down and making dad and the husband look so silly, so inept, so incompetent? What's up with that?
Well, that again is a manifestation that we're seeing and have seen for years on sitcoms. Television sitcoms perpetuate those stereotypes. And as long as the public tunes in and views, advertisers and programmers will assume that, hey, it's okay with us. We'll accept that. We'll swallow it. And if it works in a sitcom, well, certainly the format and the model will work in a radio ad.
Wow.
They
I remember
what we are hungry for.
Now, I'd like to contrast that to some of your commercials, which I think are outstanding.
Thank you.
Let me describe one, and then could you tell us how this happened? Maybe share a little bit, without releasing any secrets that maybe your clients don't want released. But you have a commercial that I just love. I think it's one of the finest commercials ever written. It's about "I want pizza now," or "We want pizza now." It airs right here on USA Prepares. Can you tell us about that? Because I think there's some education in that. It's not just a commercial to sell you. It actually teaches you something.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the ad. Of course, I produced it and I wrote it. I can't claim total originality for it because there's nothing new under the sun. I just found an idea and modified it. But it starts with the phrase you mentioned, I, that's first person, want, a need, a desire, and pizza, a very common food in America. Well, it's under the context of advertising. And then the word now is the urgency part of that phrase. And it's relatable because we have children who say those words, and every parent can relate to that. I want pizza, I want ice cream, I want to go to the park, I want a pony. Children say these things. And so that is a form of advertising. Advertising to the parent, who is the listener. That's the whole premise of the context there, to educate advertisers on humans that are out there listening have basic human needs. We want what we want, and we want it now. And in America, we can quite often get it.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things you say. We want pizza now. And it's cute. It's very nicely done. It's tastefully done. The message gets across that's the way young people are thinking. And it's very, very clever. And I think it's one of the finest commercials ever produced. And I really mean that.
Thank you. But, it really cuts through in a simplistic manner. Advertising is not complicated. If you make it complicated, it can be, but you don't overthink advertising. It's at the basic core of our human needs. We all buy what we want for our human basic needs.
Do you think that radio stations should be concerned, radio stations, radio networks, the providers of the signal, if you will, whether it be internet-based or television-based or over-the-air radio-based, do you think that the owners should be concerned about the content of the broadcast as well as the content of the commercials?
Only if they value their listeners. And they'd better value their listeners more than ever, because we have so many options for where we can spend our time with whatever media we choose at the click of a button. Mm-hmm. So many more options are vying for our attention. And so radio had better wake up and value and serve the listeners who spend our time, we invest our time listening to that station, to that content, that programming. Yes, they'd better value them and treat them with respect, not disrespect. And that's how we program, how we produce ads. Absolutely. A great question, and hope that answers it fully.
And I used the word respect. And maybe that's what frosted me about this this shiny, hiney type commercial. I thought it was disrespectful to everyone. I thought it was not worthy of a single watt of electricity to broadcast that commercial. As a matter of fact, if I were pushing a shopping cart and I saw Charmin, I would go around it. That's how I feel about it. It's that insulting. And it seems to me that no one in the room where that commercial was dreamt up, the germ of the idea, was a senior citizen. I can't imagine someone who is 55, 65 in the room saying, I got a great idea. Shiny Heinies, that's where it's at. I can't imagine that. Does that sound true to you?
Yeah, remember Mr. Whipple. That was Charmin.
Yeah. Yeah, what they did was they took less toilet paper, put it in a package, and they said it's squeezable. And people thought, well, that's a great idea. Less for more money. That's how they sold it. Now it's Shiny Heinies. We'll be right back with Ron Allan. Ron Allan's with us. Ron, how do we get to your website if we want to learn more about commercials and if we have a business and we'd like to advertise on the radio? How do we get in touch with you?
Great. Thanks for asking, Vince. My website is bigvoiceproductions.com. However, it's not geared primarily to radio production, commercial production. It is one of my many services, and I certainly am in the market for new advertisers, new customers. But bigvoiceproductions.com, I focus on training people like myself to be voice actors and voice radio commercials and television commercials and audiobooks and everything in the audio realm.
Okay, class, that's bigvoiceproductions.com. During the break, I asked Jason, our engineer, if he would find a commercial that played on USA Prepares called, I don't know the name of it, but I believe a word in it that was used was called compliason. And this is it's a spoof. And I heard this thing, and I've been talking about doublespeak and how I don't think people are really paying attention to media as well as maybe they should if they're listening to a broadcast about medical advice or how to do something. Maybe they should pay a little bit more attention rather than get, a very tiny speck of information from it and then miss the whole point. So I heard this commercial about compliason, and it's about a child who would be in school, out of control child, and you can bring that child right into complying with you if you just put them on this new medication called compliason. Did you have anything to do with that?
No, I did not. I think I'm glad I didn't.
I asked our engineer to find it and see and if he could play it, and so we could get your take dissecting that. What I've noticed is that people really are not paying attention to, and it's not just to radio, and it's not just to television. It's pretty much to everything. If you, I've been to events where people who are supposed to be helping customers are looking down on their phones. Yep. I can see two people sitting side by side that should be making appointments for patients, and they've got their phones right next to them. and they look at their screen that they should be typing the appointment information, and they look down at their phones in case they might have missed something. How does our attention span, the change in our attention span, impact radio or television commercials, or how the messages are delivered?
Well, you said it. We have these devices, and they're so convenient for us to use. That's where we choose to spend our time with whatever particular medium. We have more choices now than ever before. When back in the day, it was basically the big three mediums: television, radio, newspaper. And then, of course, driving down the road, you had billboards, but that's not what I'm talking about. So we chose to spend our time where it was relevant, where we could find the information we needed, when we needed it, and radio was the most quick to the story, if you will. Television could not keep up with radio. Radio is known for their immediacy and still is, when it takes a bit more effort for television to put a message on. And we've all experienced that. I was a radio DJ at one time, and I was on the air when Desert Storm was announced. And I had to break my format, break my programming immediately, and announce to my listeners that America was at war. Nothing else can do that as fast as radio. Well, social media now can, and we've all become conditioned to that. I'm not sure that answers your question or not, but that's part of the reason. We now have more choices. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if radio doesn't serve their listeners better and in a different manner than they are accustomed to, then radio is going to suffer. And they have already, but it's still relevant in spite of all that.
A couple of weeks ago, I called you and we talked on the telephone. And we were looking for a day and time that would work for you to be on the air. And I mentioned that Fridays, it would have to be a Friday. And you mentioned to me that you were going to write it on your calendar permanently. And I said I was too. Now, that we made a commitment to each other, and we're both here. And we both honored that commitment as if it were important. How does that in today's society relate to that? We'll be right back. The voice that you just heard, class, is that of Ron Allan. And we're talking about commercials and what has changed. If you'd like to learn more about him, bigvoiceproductions.com. Bigvoiceproductions.com. Ron, Jason has found this commercial that I heard play, and I have a feeling that it went right over the heads of many people who happen to hear this particular commercial. It's called Complacin. Complacin. Jason, would you play that for us, please?
Is your child defiant, independent, annoyingly inquisitive? After a long, hard day of following the rules, who wants to deal with troublesome kids? 49% of children suffer from oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD. Symptoms of ODD include independent thought, rampant creativity, and failure to submit to authority. But now there's a solution. The good people at Pilfer can help you with their time-release, once-daily capsule, Complacin. Your child won't be able to form his own opinions, let alone express them. It maintains your child's ability to go to a state-run school and perform simple tasks around the house. You won't have to worry about parenting, and the school won't have to deal with your kid asking questions. Complacin. You'll go from this.
Quit telling me what to do! Quit telling me what to do! Quit telling me what to do!
To this.
Good morning, Mother. I love going to school. And this week we're learning all about how the government is our federal family and they're here to help us.
Complacin. Talk to your school psychiatrist and ask for it by name.
And there you have it. So that seemed to be a commercial from the good people at Pilfer, which I think is kind of funny. So you can, if there were such a product, you could abandon your parental responsibilities. I think that's what it's saying. Ron, do you have a take on that spoof?
Yeah, I'm confused. Is it an actual product, or have you researched that, or is it a spoof?
No, it's a spoof. It really is a spoof.
Okay. Designed to do what? Call attention to the hypocrisy of drugging our kids?
Mm-hmm. I believe that's a big component of it. Yes.
Yeah. And you're not sure who's behind it?
No, I've tried I've tried to find it. I can't find it. No, I can't. But I believe, I know it's a spoof because I happened to hear it, and I was talking about doublespeak one day, and I happened to be leaving the studio, and I heard a portion of this, and I said, I believe that I just heard doublespeak, a spoof. I don't think it's real. And then I tried to research it, and it's not real. And then I found out from one of the engineers that it actually is a spoof. And it just, I don't know if it was played on purpose because I was talking about doublespeak, and to see if I would react or whether our class would react. I'm not sure. No one's owned up as to how it showed up, but it showed up at that time. So one of the things that tells me is that a radio station can play something, and even though there is the audio, even though the signal went out, not everybody heard it. And how is that impacting commercials? And what we were talking before about, you and I had an agreement, and it wasn't a written agreement. It's just two guys saying, okay, we'll do a broadcast together. It'll be at this time on this date. And we both thought it was important enough to put it on the calendar and actually show up. Okay. But that's not always the case. People have said to me, hey, I'll come by I'll stop by over the weekend. And I wait, and they don't show up. So commitments are carelessly made in a cavalier way, without really intending to show up. And in that line of thinking, how are radio commercials addressing the fact that people are not paying attention as we would like them to?
Well, that's a great connection that you're making there. It comes down to trust, doesn't it? You trusted that I would show up. I trusted that you would show up. Handshake, verbal agreement, and here we are. In essence, a radio ad should invoke trust from the advertiser to the listener. Let's make an agreement after we identify the problem. And we've got the solution based on this and this and this fact. Here's our solution. And you need to trust us if you have a need for finding that solution. But if we don't show up, in other words, if we fluff up our messages with cliches or unresearchable facts and figures with no resource to base it on, that's disrupting the trust. That's eroding the trust factor. And advertisers and radio in general are to blame for that. Allowing those messages to be on the air without a shred of proof of evidence. And we all have heard it before, but we're all claiming that we are desiring of truth and proof. And the internet came along, and we think that that is our source of proof now. And sometimes it is. And sometimes you have to dig deeper to find out if what you're reading and hearing is actually the truth. And many people, sadly, are either too lazy or don't have the time to research and find out the truth of a message. We're back to trust.
I've been trying to teach not only tactics and procedures and the way of doing things, but I've been trying to teach how to think here on USA Prepares. And over the last couple of weeks, I've used a term, and the term is widely reported. So I've said, it's widely reported that, and then I'll say what was widely reported. And then I'll define what I just said. For example.
Yeah, by whom?
Yeah, well, what I've said was widely reported. Now, I just said it. So it's widely reported. It's reported on AM, FM, podcast, telephone listen line, satellite, archives, YouTube. It's widely reported, but that has no bearing on the truth. As a matter of fact, I would make something up and say it's widely reported that. And then I would say, but it's not true. It's just widely reported because I said it. It's as simple as that. So that leads me to another concept, and that's lying by omission and lying by commission. So here's an example. There's an advertisement on the radio that our son heard when he was in his truck another time. And it's about, we'll call him Billy. And so Billy is this allegedly famous guy who makes lots and lots of money by buying and flipping houses. And you can do the same. All you have to do is go to this free seminar. It's a 2-hour seminar where you will learn Billy's secrets. Now, it's alleged or assumed or implied that Billy, this famous guy, allegedly, is going to be there. But he's not there. And if you go to the internet videos of these commercials, you'll see a great big audience and everybody's cheering and clapping, and it's what a party they're having in there. And it's a wonderful event, and it's just everybody's grinning from ear to ear. And then if you go to the reviews on YouTube about the seminars that people have gone to, these 2-hour seminars, one guy said, you can learn more from watching the second-hand move on your watch than you will attending this commercial. I'm sorry, actually it is a commercial. It's 2 hours of, now you need to spend more money. Actually, it's the free thing. We're not going to tell you anything. We're going to tell you that you need to spend money and buy the lessons, which cost a lot more. So there's lying by commission, lying by omission, lying by misleading, and I'm seeing more of it. But there are other guys like you who are not doing that. You are staying the hard line on the side of honesty and integrity. Do you have any comments about what I've said about lying, commercials that absolutely lie, and you have to dissect the words to figure out that actually, yeah, they didn't really say that because they confused us into making us believe that Billy's going to be there and we're going to get to shake hands with him and meet this bazillionaire.
Well, you said it, Vince. You're doing a great job, and you have for years on GCN, by educating the public. You have the platform to be able to do that and to bring relevant content. Simply as a warning and as wise counsel to the public, pay attention to what you're listening to. Pay attention to what you're seeing, what you're putting in your eye gate and your ear gate. And for goodness sakes, think about it. Is it in fact the truth? Take some time to find out. It could affect you, your health, your family's health, your financial well-being if you're duped by these charlatans, really is what they are, who aren't telling the truth, but they're playing on a gullible public.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, if I don't do that, if on behalf of my advertisers, I'm contributing to that. Mm-hmm. And that's why I refuse to take on advertising clients that want to perpetuate lies and half-truths and can't substantiate their claims. There's a better way. Tell the truth.
Have you ever had to literally turn down money being handed across the table to you, as it were, for an ad that you just did not think was responsible content?
Absolutely. It reflects on me and my reputation, my integrity. If I take part in that, that erodes the value I have in the marketplace as a mouthpiece for advertisers.
Very interesting.
People are not as gullible as the public or as the advertising world thinks that they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, when I first started radio over 8 years ago, I was on a radio station in Springfield, Missouri, and I was talking about preparedness. And I met with the people in the front office, and I said, "Now I have some requirements." They had some requirements of me, and I said, "Now I have some requirements too. That if I don't like an advertiser or an advertisement, that will not air on my show." And they were kind of surprised at that. I said, because it's my reputation.
Right.
Day number one, I heard an advertisement that just frosted me. It was in the first break. So I'd been there 15 minutes. First set of commercials plays. I was livid, absolutely livid at this commercial. And after the broadcast, I ran into the front office, and I said, "What's up with these commercials? That commercial will not air on my broadcast." And they looked at me. It's like, "Who are you? And you just got here. You're complaining already?" Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a erectile dysfunction commercial that I didn't like. I just didn't like it. And this was 8 years ago. And it was pushing the envelope of what I thought was decent. Now, maybe it can be done. You know, Norm Shealy, Dr. Shealy, and I have talked about erectile dysfunction from a medical perspective. But it was, you know, it's not done in a seedy way. However, I did not approve of this commercial, and it was removed. And then there were other commercials that would appear, and I'd run in the front office and I'd say, "Look, I don't want that particular guy advertising on my show because I know of his reputation, and it's not a quality reputation. As a matter of fact, it's seedy and dishonest. It will not air."
It not only hurts you, Vince, it hurts your other advertisers.
Yeah. So, class, we're back to honesty and integrity, and you may make less money. Ron Allen's with us, BigVoiceProductions.com. And you just heard the no whining rejoinder. And that was aimed at some of the broadcasters who are on the radio. They'll remain nameless, but some of the major league broadcasters who just whine. And if you listen to them, when you're all done, you've learned nothing that you can do anything about. You've listened, they have a great delivery, they talk, they hit the reset button after about 8 minutes and they say it again slightly differently. Then after 8 minutes, they say it again, hit the reset button. That's what that's aimed at. And lately, it would be Megan. Yeah, she's a whiner. But, Ron, some of your favorite commercials that you've produced, can you share with us what they are and why they worked, please?
Well, actually, one just played in your stop set there. I didn't produce it, but I am the tag voice on Mike Lindell's My Pillow commercials. And that's an excellent example of a good example of Mike following the formula of identifying a problem, including his own pain and suffering. Then he offers a relevant solution. He offers a discount, and it's trackable with a promo code. And I personally have some of Mike's products, My Pillow products, and I've had them for 10 years, and they're exactly what he promises. Excellent commercial. And by virtue of him being on the air for all these years, he must be doing something right. The public is responding.
Not only that, Ted Anderson, you'll hear his voice talking about advertising, and he'll say, he'll talk about who advertises on radio. And he says pillow companies. And he's talking about Mike Vendel.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one that I did write and produce is also on the GCN network. Or it's Biomed as the parent company, but Sunshine Pillows. Again, we're identifying a problem that the listener may have, a sore neck, a sore back, but an affordable solution is what the Sunshine Pillow offers in the form of hot or cold heat and neck wraps with no medicines, no pills, a natural solution that actually brings results.
Well,
and that
seems
advertiser, again, has been on the GCN network for many years, so the campaign must be effective.
Well, I think it must be because I believe they are selling at Walmart and on Amazon as well. So it must be working. What about your Fred? Fred is a repeater commercial. I think it's quite excellent.
Okay, great. I'm glad you brought that up. That, like you said, is targeted at people that use cliches, nameless and meaningless cliches in their advertising. We've all heard them before. Lowest prices, friendly, knowledgeable salespeople, conveniently located. We've had it up to here with those cliches. They are meaningless. So repeating cliches is what that was all about. It's a spoof. It's a sarcastic spoof at advertisers that insist on following the tried and untrue method of fill the audience's ears with cliches. We've had it. We don't need that anymore. We'll find out the truth one way, shape, or form. Why not tell the truth in your ads? Why not make your claims and then back them up. That's what the public wants. That's what the public deserves.
What about people who come up with the text for their advertisements, and the text is really not directed at the customer or the client, but to make the advertiser or the guy or gal who wrote the text feel, look at me, look at me. How do you handle that when you see that the advertisement is written for the wrong group?
Great question. I'm glad you brought that up, too. Advertising should be about the listener, not about the company. The listener wants to know, what's in it for me? We all want to know what can solve our problems, solutions to our basic needs. And so the very selective choice of words is where it all starts. Effective words that are relevant to the listener right now, today, how those words are spoken, how they are supported with music and sound effects, and most importantly, making significant offers, plus offering solutions to the listener's problems. Those are all crucial elements for effective radio advertising. Anytime you hear an ad that starts with the name of the company, you can tell where the heart of that advertiser is. All about me, not about the listener.
Yeah. And very quickly, when I had Get Prepared Expos, I bought some television commercials, and the salesperson says, we need to run these during Andy Griffith's show. And I said, are you kidding me? Anybody who's watching Andy Griffith is not going to get off the couch and come to our expo. How important is it to aim your advertisement at a specific target group in 10 seconds?
Very important, because we all want to know what's relevant to us right now. And we identify with certain things in our emotions. Andy Griffith, very important part of American folklore.
Yeah. Ron Allan, thank you so much for being with us.